have gone live, but why isn't it showing? It's still showing starting soon. Or live. Live in?
नया लाइव हो गया है, मतलब स्क्रीन पे लाइव आ चुका है ऑलरेडी.
ठीक है. Join.
आप एक बार लिंक्डइन पे देखो आप ज्वाइन कर पा रहे हो कि नहीं.
Hello everyone. Greetings to all. A very warm welcome to this special LinkedIn Live session brought to you by the ICF Delhi NCR Charter Chapter. I am Neha Sharma. Greetings to all. And I would be moderating our session today. The theme for today is Coaching for Belonging, Igniting the DEIB Conversation. And what better month than the June month of Pride? Think of DEIB as the garden we hope to grow. Diverse in species, equitable in sunlight, inclusive in care, and nurtured in belongingness. Coaching, then, is that gardener, quiet, skilled, and intentional, helping each plant grow in its unique direction without judgment or force. Our 40-minute session today would follow a simple flow where our conversation lead would interview our guest speaker first and the last 10 minutes would be reserved for Q&A. Please feel free to comment and share your thoughts during the session. With that, I'm delighted to welcome our host and today's conversation lead, Kenneth Wheeler. Hi, Kenneth. Good morning.
Good morning, Neha, and good morning to all our viewers.
Kenneth serves as the Director of Community Service at ICF Delhi NCR. He's the founder of Sela Consulting Solutions. He's a LinkedIn top voice and an executive and leadership coach by the weekday, and interestingly, a soulful songsmith by weekend. Kenneth, over to you.
Thank you, Neha, for setting the tone of our milestone conversation today and for introducing me. I personally love the metaphor you use, but importantly, Thank you for reiterating the essence of June as a Pride Month. Let me now welcome on stage our guest speaker. It's my absolute honor and privilege to welcome someone who lives and breathes the crucial space of DEIB with utmost commitment and passion. Please welcome Ms. Shruti Swaroop, founder and CEO, Embrace Consulting, and co founder, International Inclusion Alliance and ERTZ Academy Private Limited, a respected and much sought after thought leader in diversity and inclusion strategy, neurodiversity, gender equity, LGBTQ plus inclusion. Shruti is recognized as top 100 influential coaching leaders. In 2024, she was awarded by Outlook Business as a dynamic women achiever and outstanding performer. In the same year, was awarded as the dynamic achiever by Business World. Shruti is an ICF PCC credentialed coach and has coached over 1,000 plus leaders globally, helping them expand their awareness, shift unconscious biases, and lead with inclusion. Best-selling author to a meaningful book titled Microaggressions at Workplace, Shruti makes frequent appearances on CNN, NDTV, CNBC, is a two-time TEDx speaker as well. Shruti is a featured voice at international DEI forums and policy platforms, proudly representing India's voice on the global stage like USAID. Shruti, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your impactful and authentic leadership.
Very good morning to everybody. Thank you so much, Kenneth, for having me here. It's my absolute privilege and honor to be here. And thank you for such a wonderful introduction.
You're most welcome. And I've left out a few parts intentionally, otherwise, the entire podcast would be full of that. But thank you for your presence. So, audience,
Thank
today
you.
we'll explore how coaching can be a true catalyst for DEIB, not just in organizations, but across communities and society at large. So, whether you're a coach, HR leader, a DEI practitioner, or simply someone who cares about creating safer spaces, this conversation is for you. So, Shruti, recently in a LinkedIn post by Sumit Agarwal, the DEI advisor to Fortune 500 companies, he drew a list of 10 change makers on ground that are reshaping India's inclusion landscape. You featured in his elite list. So, congratulations for that
Thank
recognition.
thank you.
Picking from that post, in India, if we put our focus there, only 16.5% of LGBTQ plus employees feel safe being completely out at work. 69.56% face discrimination. That's like 2 out of 3. So I'd like us to begin with talking about the DEIB landscape in India. So I invite you, Shruti, to share with our audience what does DEIB landscape look like in India today from your lens, your on-ground experiences and observations. Tell us about the reality, its progress, pain points, potential.
Very broad question and loads to speak about on this, Kenneth. You were giving some data about LGBTQAI right now. So let me start from there. While the law has been there, we recognize we've started talking about the community. The fact is, people are still scared of talking about their preferences. It is still not a accepted norm. I have heard very senior people across the society, and I'm not just talking about organizations right now. I'm talking about doctors, I'm not talking about lawyers, I'm talking about architects, besides people who are working in IT companies or senior leadership in any service industry or any industry at all, manufacturing, construction. People don't understand what it means to be from the community. I have personally had sessions explaining people the difference between lesbians, gay, transgender, queer, and people have no idea. There was this one session that I was taking, very senior person, almost 50 years of age, 25 years, 27 years of experience. They, the kind of analogies they thought that it's very easy to do gender change therapy surgeries, and one can do that every few years. So even that awareness is not here about what it means to go through these surgeries. People from the community are so scared of saying that we are, my preferences are different. And I personally have been speaking to so many people, and I say, when somebody meets somebody, we don't ask what someone's sexual preferences is. But when it comes to the community, we start discriminating people because of their sexual preferences or because of their gender preferences, I think, which is wrong. So that gap is still there. People are still scared of coming out of the closet. People can still not talk about, I will come back, I can say that tonight I'm going for dinner with my husband and my family. But someone from the community will think twice before saying, last night I went out for dinner with my husband or my wife, because it's not seen the done thing. Um, so that's about the from a LGBTQI perspective. Gender has been the easiest for us in some industries. For example, service industry, IT industry, it's easier in terms of participation, but it's, the labor force in the IT industry. However, it is tough in terms of gender pay parity. It is tough in terms of microaggressions. Just yesterday, I was talking to somebody, and they were like, "Oh, we still get to hear statements around, you'll not be able to do it because you're a woman." Banking industry, we still see a lot of women not picking up roles, especially in the public sector banks, because that will mean a lot of movement, promotion comes with transfers, which people are not willing to take. So while it may be easy to say that gender is ahead in some areas for us as compared to LGBTQ, we are still very far behind in many sectors and many ways. And obviously, neurodiversity, we still have organizations coming to us and saying, oh, that'll mean a lot of cost, and that'll mean infrastructure, that'll mean effort. So I think people are hesitant to spend money, people are hesitant to put that effort. We do see change, but to see real displacement in this field, it'll take a while. I have very senior leaders who come to me and say, oh, you want us to be inclusive, we'll be inclusive at work, but don't expect me to become inclusive as a person. And I'm like, it's not a doctor's coat that you wear and you become inclusive. Either you are or you're not. It's the same society that comes to work, and it's the same society that, from workplace becomes the society. They're not two separate entities. So the society needs to change, upbringing needs to change, and I can go on and on and on about this.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, two things that I picked up from your conversation so far is the challenge that's coming across to me from what you've said is what comes in our way of embracing DEIB is when we hold on to one narrative. You're a woman, you'll not be able to do it. You need that doctor's wear and show that you're a doctor. So it's that holding on to one narrative, one identity, one belief, and then just guarding it with all our might. So in that process, we forget that we can have multiple authentic selves for ourselves and not just one. So with that thought, Shruti, my next question to you is, what are the systemic or behavioral changes you've encountered while advising organizations or boards on inclusion?
You know, um, I'm just trying to articulate it in a nice way. So we work with factories, we work with banks, we work with consulting firms, and I think the main challenge we face is people hear, people listen, people want to make a difference, but when rubber hits the road, there's that effort. As I was just saying, the effort, it is a lot of effort. It means I need to watch what I'm talking, I need to watch what I'm saying. There's so many biases we have. Things like Anchor bias. I like a particular thing and hence I'm holding on to it for my life, even though I know letting go of it will really make life nice. So I understand that if I have a diverse workforce, it'll add to productivity and performance and creativity, innovation, and all of that. But I'm used to a style of working for the last 50 years or 40 years. So a lot of organizations we speak to, they come and tell us परफॉर्मेंस तो हो रही है ना मैडम, productivity तो हो रही है, so why do you want to change it? So when you come from that point of view that performance and productivity are happening, so why do I have to change my behavior to really improve it? I think that holding on to the past, I think is a huge issue because we're just not willing to change the way we have been doing things. That's one. um, Secondly, it requires a lot of self awareness, whole lot of self awareness. I was talking about bias, simple things. All of us are biased. I think just that acceptance that each one of us is biased. We come from a point of view where bias has a negative connotation. So we say, I'm not biased. We run these mentimeters up with, and we've run this with about, I think, 15,000, 16,000 people across all our clients and workshops. And people will come back and say, I'll ask them this simple question: do you think you're biased? And people will be like, no, we're not biased. And then you run these workshops and awareness sessions and bias awareness programs, and then they'll be like, oh, we didn't know. There was this one gentleman, he said, I thought I'm not biased towards women, but now I'm realizing that I am biased against women. So it's amazing how awareness is a huge issue and people are not. In fact, there's so many. Harvard has done this implicit HR, implicit project, right? That tells us about our biases. How many of us actually have gone there and done it and found out whether we are beauty biased or age related biased or caste related bias? We don't do that. I think once we become aware, it will make a lot of difference.
Thank you for pulling that out. Quickly. And at this stage, I would like to take a deviation. So we've seen what the reality is. You've helped us explore that. And probably now let's move to the response of how coaching becomes that catalyst for DEIB. So in a space where, at times the best of policies in the organization fall short and training often misses the heart, coaching steps in to create real human shift. And as I would like to put it, you can't build an inclusive culture by training people's minds. You have to coach their hearts. So, Shruti, you wear the hat of both a DEIB strategist and an ICF PCC coach. So, from that lens, allow me to ask you, what makes coaching uniquely suited to advance the DEIB vision and goals at an individual, team, or systemic level?
Uh, I was just giving you this example, right, where a senior leader said that don't ask me to change as a person. I will be inclusive at work, but not ask me to don't ask me to become inclusive as a person. I think when we do one-on-one coaching, when we speak to people at an individual level and we are able to make them look inwards, coaching is all about looking inwards and understanding where we are and then making progress, right? So I think if we are able to help people or support people or enable people, I'm using the word enabling, I'm rephrasing myself. If you're able to enable people to look inwards and see the benefit or become just more self aware, help them understand, and not just from inclusion perspective. I think from a person perspective, how my biases could be obstructing me to grow, could be obstructing me to grow my team, could be obstructing me from creating an environment or a culture that is beneficial for me, the team, and the organization. I think it's very important. I have been on multiple coaching sessions. And when I say multiple, I really mean multiple. Where people come back and say, I'm finding, ma'am, I was sitting in a panel discussion or in a boardroom, and I was not heard because of my gender or because of my seniority or because of my tenure in the organization. And my point is, if I flip it and I sit with those people on the panel discussion or the board members who are there in that conversation, and I say, what prevents you from hearing this person? What prevents you from shooting down their ideas? What is it that comes in your way when you are listening to this person? I think that will open communication between all kinds of people, because that awareness that I am not against this lady or I'm not against this person who's in his 20s, the Gen Z, as we are most of us are pretty much against Gen Z. But I think that awareness will really help. That we are not against a person. I think we have our biases, and hence we are preventing them from becoming their whole self and getting their whole self to work. And if we become aware through coaching, we can possibly open those doors of communication. We can support people bringing their whole selves to work, and in the process also bring our whole selves to work. A lot of times very senior leaders say, you're coaching us, you're trying to change us. If we change, we will not be who we are, so we don't want to be coached. And these are statements I have personally heard during coaching sessions. And my thing is, no judgments here as a coach, as a person, but these are what obstruct growth. So I'm
Hmm.
taking the liberty of using my the words I get to hear from coaching, but yeah,
Hmm.
that's how it is.
Well, thank you for being candid and expressing. And all of this is your on ground experience. So that makes it real. This is what you've experienced when you're conducting several workshops on this important topic. And what's coming to me as a learning when I listen to you, Shruti, is perhaps we don't need more initiatives on the EIB. We need a bit of more intention, right? Because for me, if you ask me, as torch bearers of transformation, I'm talking about the coaching ecosystem and all the coaches on this call and listening. I often think about how can coaching support executives develop their own DEIB narratives. So at times, if you go to a CEO and there is an event that's talking about in the organization for DIBE, their narration or the script of what they need to speak is coming from a communication team. So maybe coaching helps support that executive develop their own narrative, because when it's their own, like you said, self exploration. So let me ask you this: how can coaches support the development of executives through the lens of DEIB, such that we can ensure there is more ownership and role modeling at the top?
I think we all first need to understand the true meaning of DEIB. Whether it's you call it DEIB, EDBI, whatever one wants to call it. There's a huge gap in the real definition of these words and what people understand. A lot of times we see very senior leaders confusing between diversity and inclusion and using it interchangeably. Diversity is just each one of us being different. Inclusion is accepting people for who they are. We all come with judgments. I was in a coaching session myself as a coachee of, I think, almost a month back, and I said something, and my coach was like, Shruti, you're being judgmental. And I was like, oh yes. So we are all judgmental. We can all sit in with our coach's hat, but the fact is, somewhere as humans, we are judgmental. So we need to know the difference between diversity and inclusion, accepting people for who they are, and that's a very, very big gap there. And the reason why most of us, I would like to believe, are not or are unaccepting of others is because we are not accepting of who we are as people. So I think how coaches can help, or anybody can help anyone else, is can we first accept who we are as people, because that's the start of a journey. Thereafter, obviously, when you're sitting with the other person, we say coachability, right? So I think the other person also needs to be ready to make that shift, needs to be ready to work on certain areas, any area, right? And we know it as coaches, we know that you cannot force feed a person. Change has to come from within. But if the person is willing, I think self-awareness, helping them create goals, helping them practice it, supporting them in making that change. And it's not going to be an easy change. 30 years, 40 years, 50 years of learning is not going to change overnight. So a lot of patience, a lot of time will be required to do this. The stakeholders need to be signed. We need to have a say in this, especially at an organization level, at a one-on-one level. We know that people need to want to make that change. So there's a lot of work. I think programs like these LinkedIn Live that we are having right now, Kenneth, if people understand that inclusion starts from me, inclusion starts from and I need to become more self-aware. I need to start accepting people for who they are. We are also willing to want everybody to change. I mean, I'll be more than happy to tell Kenneth, why don't you go for a walk from tomorrow morning, or why don't you change the way you are? But can we just let people be for who they are and just support them to grow rather than. I have a huge problem with the word transformation, for example. The moment you tell somebody we are going to transform you, transformation coach, and you basically saying the I is not right now. You're basically saying you need to be transformed for growth. No, you need to become aware, we need to evolve, we need to grow. But transformation is basically, you're basically changing the person. So I
Hmm.
don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
No. Absolutely. So my essence of what I picked up, and I'm sure there's comments flowing in the chat box as well, but it appears to me that it's more like representation matters when we talk about DEIB. But what I'm hearing you say is the environment perhaps matters more than than just representation. And the analogy that comes to my mind is, if I had to plant seeds in a garden, I could be using the top best quality seeds. But if the soil of that garden is toxic, not welcoming, not embracing, the seed will not germinate and will not grow into a beautiful tree. So, um, for me, I think the start has to be human, to be authentically and genuinely curious, and I think that will help belonging grow a little more organically. So, Shruti, moving on from this, I would love to ask you, if you were to look forward to 2030, okay, what are the three biggest shifts needed for India to become a more inclusive workplace ecosystem?
My God. Uh, you're asking me very tough questions. And I'll tell you, tough because, not because of the answer, but tough because there is so much to be said, yet there is so much that needs to be, there's not the right time, because I think it's a journey. So if you notice, about 10 years back, we were not talking as much about DEI. And 25 years back, when I started my career, at best, we would talk about cultural inclusion and cultural workshops and all of that. Cross cultural workshops is what we used to call them at best. But inclusion wasn't spoken as much. What has happened in the last 20 years or so is that we are speaking about inclusion. We understand inclusion. There are research papers on inclusion, and tons of those. There's an entire um, model and equation on inclusion which has come. People are talking about psychological safety, belonging. So a lot has happened. Now, if I use the same thing and speak about what may happen, I think if we just keep talking about it, irrespective of the elements of diversity. For a minute, I'm saying let's not talk about diversity because we are all diverse. Just like people have different fingerprints, we all are diverse because we are different, right? So let's keep diversity aside. If we just talk about inclusion, so I say irrespective of my gender, my age, my caste, my background, my language, my religion, my political affiliation, my parental status, marital status, I want to be accepted for who I am. And if we can continue to do awareness sessions, if we can continue to um, have conversations on every platform, if we can continue to say that okay, don't try and transform or change, just accept people for who they are, um, over a period of time it may just make a change. The good thing is conversations are happening in school. I see conversations around diversity inclusion happening at schools. My kids went through it when they were in grade 5, and that was when I realized that people don't understand the difference between diversity inclusion, because my kid got home a nice deck which said, diversity is accepting people for who they are. And I actually went to school and I fought um, with them. I said, no, that's inclusion. You can't teach them something wrong.
Hmm.
Uh, so if we start from schools, DEI is now a subject in colleges. I have been taking that entire credit course in a number of business schools today myself. There are books on DEI, multiple books. There are conversations like the one that we are making. So I think if we can have those conversations, if we can continue to make and support each other, hopefully in the next 5 years we'll see a change, provided things like COVID don't happen, because the pandemic was a huge um, breaker in terms of shift. We saw how the labor workforce participation of women came down dramatically during those 2 years, and we have not managed to bring it back up. We were the World Economic Forum says we were at 26% of women participation in the workforce globally, which came down to 19 point some percentage. I don't know the number, but it is approximately somewhere between 19 and 20. In those 2 years, because we have gender defined roles, because it was very tough for people from different kind of diversities to find jobs. So if there is no pandemic that happens, if life continues, or anything similar to pandemic that happens, if life continues status quo for the next 5 years, if we continue to teach and speak about diversity from schools, colleges, organizations, if we are focused about making change, we continue to have these kind of platforms, hopefully some traction, if not 5 years and 10 years, participation of diversity workforce should hopefully improve in organizations.
Thank you. That was inspiring, and I do appreciate the fact that you've still kept it grounded and realistic. Shruti, I would love to fire some rapid questions to you. Maybe one word, two-word answer. Are you ready? Putting you on the hot spot again.
Go for it.
So, Shruti, tell me one belief about DEIB you've unlearned over time. I think we've lost Shruti temporarily while she comes back. Neha, could I invite you to maybe just pick up some comments that are happening? What's happening in the conversation?
Absolutely, Kenneth. I think all our viewers are really excited to have Shruti here answering their questions. I think Shruti
Shruti is
has
back.
joined us
Yeah.
back. I'll put her back on stage.
Sorry about that. No excuses.
No, no, that's absolutely fine. I'm not sure if you got my question. Would you like me to repeat
No,
it?
I didn't. I didn't.
Okay. So I was asking Shruti, one belief about DEIB you've unlearned over time, briefly.
That you can force people to change or
Thank
accept.
you. Thank you. TEDx or coaching sessions? What's more exhilarating for you?
TEDx.
One quality every inclusive leader must have. One word.
Self-awareness.
Perfect. A coaching question you love asking your clients.
Do you know your strengths?
And last rapid fire question for you. In one word, what's your personal vision for the future of DEIB?
To being able to see all kinds of diversity at the workplace.
Thank you. I think you did well. I'll have a gift hamper passed on to you. All right. So we have 6 minutes on the clock. Neha, if we could pick up some questions, 2, 3 questions. Over to you, Neha. Welcome to the stage.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, both Kenneth and Shruti. Thank you, Shruti, for being such a bold, authentic, and generous voice in this space. And Kenneth, thank you for leading such a grounded and expansive conversation for all of us. Now, in the interest of time, we'll quickly take up a few questions that have come. The first one would be from Deepika. Deepika Bhattacharya asks that with recent announcements in US on diversity, how is it impacting the agenda?
In fact, Deepika was one of the first questions that came. I could see the question coming in. So organizations have slowed down their focus on inclusion, to be very honest. It has made a change. However, we do see a lot of organizations looking at inclusion in a different way by using words like leadership, belonging, psychological safety. And I think the whole focus, as have been saying, is on acceptance. So if we can just focus on inclusive leadership, if we can just focus on people, we don't really need to have a different terminology and do it. So it has affected US based organizations, a few organizations in the Europe, but we're still doing some very good work in India, in Southeast Asia, in Middle East. Um, Hopefully we'll come back in 4 years.
Thank you for answering that, Shruti. And the next question is from Praveen K. Devan. In your experience, what is the most overlooked barrier to inclusivity in the workplace, and how can we address that in a meaningful way?
What is a barrier to inclusivity? I think a huge barrier to inclusivity is think or believing that being inclusive needs a lot of money. Especially in organizations, they think, oh, it'll flexibility and policies and infrastructure. Um, it's just behaviors. It's just acceptance. How can we?
Sure.
Okay, one second. There was a how can we address it in a meaningful way? I think by creating more and more awareness about inclusion. I think that's what we need to do.
Thank you for that. And the next question is from our very own V. Krishnan. A lot of beliefs around DEIB is due to upbringing and conditioning by society. How can we impact that for future?
I was just saying, right? Schools have started talking about it. Colleges have started having that as an entire course. If we started from kids who are 8, 10, 11 years of age, my children do that all the time. A lot of times, I get pulled up for making statements around which are biased, and it's a part of our upbringing, right? We make those statements. So if our children are become aware, hopefully they'll be better human beings. And you speak to any 10, 12, 15-year-old kid today, they are far more accepting towards the LGBTQI community, or they're far more accepting towards both parents playing different gender roles. They're far more accept they my children, and I have two boys. My children pull me up all the time for having those pinks and blues and differentiation of colors or toys, that why can't you gift a mechanics to a girl and things like those. So hopefully that conditioning at home will make a change.
Absolutely. And I would quickly shoot the last one. This comes from Dr. Kaushik Chatterjee. Is belongingness a consequence of equity and inclusion of a diverse workplace community? If so, how do you measure it consistently?
So, is it a consequence? I think it goes hand in hand, Kaushik. I don't think it is, one leads to the other. So, it's not that diversity leads to inclusion, because as I've been saying, diversity is there. Inclusion is not a byproduct, belongingness is not a byproduct, psychological safety is not a byproduct. Together, belongingness, psychological safety create an inclusive work environment. Now, how do we measure it? We can measure it by seeing what do people feel. Now, at Embrace, we do measure inclusion for organizations, and we have our own trademark tool. And I just kind of plugged in my marketing here. But on a serious note, we can measure. We measure it by um, understanding as and looking at whether it's being done as a tokenism or whether it's being really done in terms of actions. Are diversity champions, are they living it or are they just speaking it? I know diversity champions in huge organizations who are like running the sponsor and running it for the entire organizations, who in a social environment come back and say, oh, she had to get the promotion because she is a woman. So those are examples of where there is the inclusion is actually missing. So I think we can measure it by seeing what is happening in terms of microaggression, in terms of inclusion, in terms of communication, policies, processes. All of those is a we can measure. So
All right. And I think with that, in the interest of time, we'll call it a wrap. Thank you again to both of you and to all our attendees and listeners. This is just the beginning. At ICF Delhi NCR, we believe coaching isn't just about performance, it is about purpose. We leave you with this quote: diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Belonging is dancing like no one's watching because you know you are safe. On behalf of ICF Delhi NCR Charter Chapter, thank you. Until we meet again, keep coaching, keep belonging.
Thank you, Shruti. It was a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. Gratitude to you and for your time and for the insights.
thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone,
Thank
for
you.
joining.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.